My name is Paul Paravano. I'm in the Office of Government and Community Relations here at MIT, and it's been my pleasure to welcome and host this conference for 6 years now. We've been so pleased to welcome our NEMPA friends here to campus. And I wanted to just take a minute to say how valuable and important it is to have this kind of conversation with smart people who are thinking about automobiles and the role that they play in our lives. And having sat through the presentation at lunch and having been to all of these discussions now over 6 years, and 6 years is a long time, and a lot of technology has changed and been enhanced, I'm going to give you a challenge, which is that this conference is going to stay at MIT until I can walk out of here and drive a car home. So there's a lot clearly that needs to happen before we can do that. So sit tight and remember to come back in a year. One of the things that is very important to me is to tie the kinds of discussions and challenges that NEMPA is writing about and thinking about to work that's going on here at MIT. And for a long time, I've tried to build a stronger connection between the work that NEMPA does and what you represent with students and faculty. I'm really thrilled today that we have a faculty member who you're going to hear about and hear from shortly, but I wanted to also introduce you to Rachel Aptowitz, who graduated from MIT a year ago in June and is now an engineer at GM in Michigan. And this is exactly the kind of thing I've been dreaming about, to get more of our students thinking about working in the automobile industry. I don't think there are very many. You read a lot about startups and the kinds of work that MIT students are doing, and not enough of them are going into the automobile industry. Rachel, I wonder if you'd just stand up for 30 seconds and tell the group what you're doing.
Yes, I'm right here. Hi, I'm Rachel. I just graduated a week ago. Or a year ago next week. So it's great to be back on campus. As Paul said, I moved to Michigan and started my career at General Motors in their new graduate vehicle engineering rotational program. I think it's really exciting to be starting my career in this field. And I actually met Paul when I was back on campus recruiting students in the spring. And I'm happy to say that we'll have 18 MIT students coming to GM this summer. So I'm just really excited to see the next generation come in and be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And Professor John Leonard, who you'll hear from later, was one of her professors when Rachel was an undergraduate. So that's exactly the kind of thing that I'm really thrilled about, and one of the reasons why I was excited when my friends John Bugsy Lawler and Craig Fitzgerald and Lisa and others came to me and said, we'd like to hold this conference on campus. The other powerful MIT connection is my good friend John Leonard, and you're going to hear about all the people on the panel, but I wanted to say a couple of things about John in particular. He's a good friend, and a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we had a visitor from Congress. One of my jobs is to take elected officials around campus when they come to visit. And one of the visits I arranged was with Professor Leonard. And I shouldn't say this, and please don't repeat it, because it could turn my office into a parking lot, because you don't want to, have people think that one faculty member is better than the other, but the congressman told me afterwards, that time with Professor Leonard was my favorite part of the afternoon. So I won't tell you the other places that I brought him to. So Professor Leonard is Professor of Mechanical and Ocean Engineering, joined MIT's faculty in 1996. He was the co-director of the MIT Ford Alliance from 2009 to 2013. And has been the team leader of the MIT DARPA Urban Challenge team, which was one of the 6 teams that finished that particular race. We're very proud of all of our faculty, but John Leonard is one of those people that has put his imagination and creativity to produce all kinds of innovation in thinking about robotics and the capabilities that exist in that field. And I'm glad that you'll be able to hear from him and the other panelists. So again, I welcome you. I'm thrilled that we're together for the afternoon to learn from one another. It's a pleasure to have you on our campus. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, everybody. 6 years, as Paul said, we've been doing this, and I still am a Framingham State graduate, and still, it's a daunting thing to stand up here in front of some really intelligent people and introduce the panel. I'm first going to we're going to dive into the topic in just a minute, but I want to kind of give you a lay of how the land's going to go today. We're going to introduce our speakers. They're each going to have a short period of time to give a presentation. Then we're going to have a Q&A afterwards. And I'm going to actually leave it up to you whether you want to have a break between the presentations and the Q&A part. I will sort of poll you at the end. My vote is probably not to do it at this point, but you will all tell me that you're ready to get out of here for 5 minutes. But we're going to do the Q&A, and then following the Q&A, we worked with Brian Reamer, a research scientist here from the Age Lab, to develop a consumer survey, and we actually have some pretty interesting news that we're going to preview at the end of the presentation today. So make sure you stick around for that. And then finally, I want to make mention of the displays that are in the room next to this. If you get a chance to go over there, Bentley Publishers are over there, FCA, Toyota, and the Museum of Fine Arts as well. So we want to make sure you get a chance to see some of the presentations over there. So on to the topic. We're here to discuss how technology and design come together. And I think maybe the easiest way to think about that is in a bit of a microcosm. And that microcosm is the automatic transmission shifter. For many years, the automatic transmission shifter was on the column. And it was there because it kind of needed to be. Because at the time, when automatic transmissions became more and more popular in cars, and in American cars specifically, the idea that 3 passengers across the front seat was a critical selling factor for a lot of people. And if you watch Turner Classic Movies at all, and you see people roll up to the curb in their 1950s era cars, they would exit on the curb side. So they'd never open the driver's door, they'd slide across the seat and get out that way. So it was a sort of a function of how people used their cars. Then, in the 1960s and then through the 1980s, the automatic transmission shifter moved to the floor. Now, because there's no real mechanical connection between the shifter and the transmission, the shifter can be anywhere. So Mercedes moved it back to the column. Manufacturers like Lincoln moved it to buttons on the dashboard. And literally can be anywhere. But design tells manufacturers that they need to put that shifter on the floor because people want it there. People want to buy it more when that transmission shifter is on the floor. So it's a conflict. It's a constant conflict between technology and, there's regulatory things thrown in there, but design and technology fight with each other all the time. Is it aerodynamics versus appearance? Is it safety versus how a car looks or curb appeal? Technology already dictates the shape of the cars that we're going to drive in the future, and you don't need to look much further than Google's car to figure that out. That is a radical departure from the kinds of cars that we have driven up to this point. So we've assembled a panel of people to try to help us understand how technology and design can work together and how they fight together in a lot of ways. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Timothy Innes, Head of Advanced Design for FCA North America. Tim was appointed to Head of Advanced Design in 2009. In this position, he was responsible for all interior and exterior advanced packaging design activities for Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge brand vehicles. He's held a variety of positions, including responsibility for the product design office, and most recently the position of Director of Advanced Design. He supports the FCA US LLC sponsorship of the Industrial Design Program at his alma mater, the University of Cincinnati, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Design in 1990. In recent years, he's also advised seniors in the College for Creative Studies in Detroit. So Tim, I'd like to have you come up.
So I was the kid who drew pictures and wasn't very good in math, and definitely feel like the dumb kid in the smart class today. I'm here at MIT, which is like, really, anyways. So I came in as an intern in 1987 at the Advanced Studio in Highland Park at the time. What was technology to me at that point? It was, your car telling you that your door's ajar, right? I mean, that was kind of it, right? So anyways, where's this? I wanted to talk a little bit about promises today. Promises perhaps kept, and promises maybe broken. I think I'm going to disappoint you right now. I'm going to tell you a lot about what we're doing at FCA. And there isn't any flying cars. It was just a couple weeks ago, I had a presentation, and I didn't realize there was a bunch of high school students that were going to be in it. And they didn't know what the Jetsons was. And that made you feel bad. And anyways, really? Anyways, I was also thinking, I was looking at this last night. It was like Herbie, the love bug. That was another one that was, that was a true autonomous car, I think, right? Well, before. It had personality, had everything. And I think that would have been a good one to actually use here. And I'll get into that a little bit. I like this quote. I think it's true. I think we do have a tendency to do this, right? It's like, man, 2 years it's going to be this. 10 years, right? No, it's backwards a little bit. I think we don't know exactly what the future is going to be, right? And consumers are kind of puzzled by that as well. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of ethnographic research in the position I have talked to a lot of different people from Austin to Dallas to. That's not very far. To Atlanta, to Portland. A lot of them talk about. Fortunately, none of them talked about flying cars, which was good. A lot of them talked about autonomy and the benefits there. Tried to talk to the horse. He really wasn't too cooperative in the discussion. But how do you manage some of the technology expectations across a pretty diverse group, right? So, aging boomers, and then millennials and family formation is something that. What are those expectations there? A lot of it's shaped and stuff that we don't really have any control over, right? So just think about the last 10 years, right? He's mentioned 6 here, right? 10. A lot of things have happened in the past 10 years. 2007, the iPhone was launched, right? Think about that. The iPhone was launched 2007, right? And how many have them, right? Everybody here probably has one, right? I was trying to find a stat at lunchtime, actually, to find out how many were actually sold or have been sold. I bet you it's a lot. Obviously, Barack Obama, he was elected, right? Right? Supreme Court discussion around same-sex marriage, Occupy Wall Street. You guys have won a bunch of Super Bowls, and that's cool. I thought, and when I did this, it was actually, I started to put this together on the day that we heard about Prince. And then, but not, a couple of weeks before that was that SpaceX landing, right? Which I was like, really? But what was awesome about that is that they failed 4 times, right? And then they did it, right? And I think they made a projection that they're probably not going to be able to land the next one that they did. But anyways, a lot of things have happened. I'll talk about the next 4. Hey, right? We could stop right here. I guess, that's the thing that I guess we always get kind of confused about talking about the future because, a lot of it isn't in our control, right? So I also think that on the design side, we oftentimes get kind of painted with, the brush of it. It's kind of squishy and soft what we do. It's kind of hard to kind of articulate some of this stuff. But, we do look at some ideas and some concepts and through a couple different lenses, and I'll go through a little bit of that. I'm going to talk about a couple of them. Continuations. We are aware, and Eric was kind of talked about this too, on the way that density of urban environments are going to continue to grow, right? There's a great opportunity for us. There's a great opportunity from the design side for us to exploit some of those opportunities. Got the stat there. Is that the U.S. is going to replace about 82 billion square feet in infrastructure in the next 10 years. We're going to build an additional 231 billion of new square feet. That's kind of cool. Think about trucks on that side of it. The way we're doing business is completely different now, right? It's collaborative. It's you're either at home, sometimes you're at work, but you're doing a lot more collaboration. And Uber has really kind of changed the way we're kind of using cars pretty significantly, right? A lot of great opportunities. We look at them also through like an emerging kind of, I don't want to call them trends, but they're obviously emerging technologies. V2X, right? Smart cities, Eric was talking about. Augmented reality. One of the great examples I thought that I was blown away with, and it didn't get a lot of press, was what BMW did with their mini glasses. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen those. This is the fact that you just put on a pair of glasses and it wiped out all of the visibility concerns that you had, right? So you're seeing right past the A pillar, right past the B pillar. You can see everything, and that's a fantastic. It's a fantastic thing for us to exploit because now we can make the windows a lot smaller and all that. Anyways. So wild cards, possibility grenades, right? This was 2 years ago, right here. That was Ebola, right? And that had everybody freaked out about whether or not we should actually be on a plane, right? If there was something, SARS a couple of years back on that one, it was where all that panic kind of ensued, and all of a sudden, a real true disruptor would kind of flow in, and it's like, what happens there if an economy falls, right? This is the Greece piece, and what could happen? The one I was going to build here too is the Bernie Sanders one, but that's about. There's a wild card. We'll see what happens on that. So today, what do we do know? In 2025, we as an industry, I think, are faced with some significant hurdles. 54.5 it's a difficult number, I think, for us to kind of wrap our heads around. There's a plan, there's a path. That path often includes technology, and that technology comes at a cost, right? Technology kind of continues to kind of build into a car this added cost that customers are still trying to figure out how they manage, right? The length of terms of the loan, we kind of, this chart here, kind of hard to see, but it says that, over the past 6 years or so, the willingness for someone to go above $430 a month in car payments is kind of like, it's kind of plateaued there at that point. It creeps up a little bit, but not significantly. Yet the cost of the car continues, our cost continues to go up. What has happened, though, is that the length of terms of loans have gone to, now we're at 84 months in some cases, right? Pretty soon you're going to mortgage your car, right? But if you think about that from the design side, there's some great opportunities. I don't know what year, actually I got a new plane, but the other day I got into a plane that was built in '82, but it was all new interior, right? And you're like, well, okay, so maybe there's some opportunities from a technology standpoint, a durability standpoint, but then from a design standpoint on how do we manage some of the durability expectations on some of that. The one thing that I think we have control as design is the experiences. Experience is kind of, it's a little squishy, a little soft. But it's the discussion of, like, and I think it's actually the real value of a car. A Wrangler, that's an experience. A Jeep Wrangler is an experience. A Hellcat is an experience. I think even a minivan is an experience if you got good kids. If they're mine, they're not a good experience. We'll pay money for this, right? Consumers pay money for this, right? It's a concert or it's a good cup of coffee, right? It's a vacation or it's even a retail experience, right? I mean, you get sucked into the Apple store because they've changed the front, they've got a new product, or I don't know if necessarily you want to call it Starbucks. I guess it is good coffee. I like it. And those experiences are providing us access. And I think this is the part that I'm really kind of excited about, kind of venturing into. I've been in the industry for 26 years. It doesn't look like it, I know. Is it those entering, right? You're entering now. I mean, in the progression and what you'll see in your first 26 years is going to be phenomenal. Mine, it still was, I had already missed the column, right? So I already had a console and a steering wheel and and it's like the passenger side was for passengers. And now with autonomy, I don't know where the passenger side is and I don't know where the driver's side is and I don't know where all that stuff is. But I think one of the things that we can play around with here and really kind of and start from the design side is this notion of access. There's at a moment's notice in a car, you want to feel energized, right? It flips the switch pretty quickly. No, I just need to chill out, be calm, right? No, I want to socialize now, right? No, you know what? I need my privacy. And if you think about the way even like a Starbucks is laid out, right? I mean, there's times where you want all of that. You came in there to be energized, right? Sometimes you want to talk with your friends, right? Sometimes you're just like, find me the spot where I can do my work on my laptop. And other times I just want to chill out and listen to the music. You think about what that could do for us and how exciting that is, I think, to build an interior around that is kind of a neat thing for us. And that's the piece where I'm excited about, just to kind of explore. And you'll have an opportunity, because it's all going to happen, right? So, technology. I mean, we've come pretty far ways. Not that long ago, right? Where you want to put the start point on a horse and buggy, but we'll call it 120 plus years, right? We've come a long way, I think, in a short amount of time. And I think where we've been, I'll use the word, struggling is trying to understand how there's this push of technology and then there's this pull from the consumer and trying to manage those expectations are the thing that I think we, it's a great opportunity, but it's also the thing that we struggle with in some cases, right? I won't get into too much, but I mean, we're putting blind spot detectors on stuff that I don't know if we necessarily need blind spot detectors on features, but on cars, but we're putting a lot of that stuff on things that I didn't know we needed. So, what do from the design side? I think that the consumers themselves they're expressing a need for simplicity, and I thought that's why I put the paperclip there. That Adidas shoe there is a 3D printed sole. Nobody asked, hey, could you print me a 3D printed sole shoe? Because I think that would be really cool. Nobody asked for that. Nobody asked for curved screens and and OLED displays, but it's given us some great opportunities from a styling standpoint. Nobody said, hey, can we make my body out of the car out of aluminum? And they like the fact that it might not rust, but nobody's asked for that. What they've asked for, though, is for it to just really work seamlessly and without any great deal of pain on their part. All right. So where was I at here? So for us, I'm enjoying this time, right? Because it's enabling this new technologies, these new expectations, these new possibilities of producing vehicles with different materials to really scare ourselves in some cases, right? This was a thought that we had for a mobility device for in the urban context, wheel motors and all that other stuff, crazy glass, doors that opened up. So it's really given us an opportunity to kind of flip the switch a little bit, or flip the script on the aesthetics and the possibilities of that. I think what was great is if you guys walked out, and I think it's a Gary area, and is that part of MIT?
Yes. I think everything down here is.
Is it? Yeah. But that, I mean, the skyline is completely, and then you go over there and you see it, and it's like, wow, right? That's crazy. So, hey, we're going to try some stuff, right? Some of the stuff is pretty funny. Some of them make you laugh. We had some good names for this. The first one was Vegas. Second one was Niblet, right? R2D2 was the other one. And the last one was Observatory. Some of these were autonomous solutions. The first one was, the second and the fourth one was an autonomous solution. And I guess that's the piece that I've really enjoyed past couple of years is this, what technology's enabled us to kind of explore and dream about. Because when I was in school and sketching cars, I wasn't sketching these yet, right? And now anything's possible for us, and I think that over the next couple of years, perhaps we overestimated the first two, right? But I think we probably underestimated the next 10, right? Barring the other, wild cards and all the other things, right? That could happen to us. I think it's kind of funny, though, is that we've kind of gone almost back to full circle, right? Where we're back to here, right? Essentially. So as I close, it'd be the last slide here. It kind of sums up this quote. Kind of sums up my team's work and the work that I enjoy doing. I don't know if that. I hope that addressed some of it. But that's where we're at, and thank you much.
Thanks. Thanks. I think you're the third person from the design staff at FCA who told me that they weren't good at math and they just drew cars in school. So you guys must have all hung out together. Oops, sorry. We're just going to change a presentation quickly here. We've assembled a really diverse panel. We've got people here from car companies, we've got people here from academia, and we've got people from the pure design world. And Michelle Tellini-Finnemore is my example. She is the curator of fashion arts at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and has her PhD in the history of decorative arts, design, and material culture from the Bard Graduate Center in New York City. She's been a curator at a number of major museums, including the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, as a fashion specialist at Sotheby's. And interesting for us, she curated an exhibit called Driving Fashion, Automobile Upholstery from the 1950s at the museum at FIT. She has taught courses on fashion design and film history at the Rhode Island School of Design and the Mass College of Art. So, Michelle, I'd like to have you come up.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'm really delighted to participate. And I have to say, I've titled this Cars and Fashion with a question mark. But for me, it has never been a question mark, actually. I have had a long-term interest in the relationship between cars and fashion, starting way back when, in 1997, when I was a master's student at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. And also, this relationship more generally between design, culture, and art is something that we do explore very actively at the Museum of Fine Arts. And so I'm going to talk a little about our current exhibition. And we've also had a few exhibitions in the past. I don't know if any of the Boston natives here saw the Ralph Lauren car exhibition that was there a number of years ago. Beautiful show. Yeah, it was a gorgeous show. We also recently had one called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which was in a smaller gallery in our American wing, and it featured the private collection of a local collector who collects the most amazing models of the concept cars from the 40s and 50s. He has a design archive that is really substantial. And so that was a feature of that exhibition as well. And that collection is coming to the museum. So we are very, very actively engaged in kind of documenting industrial design, car design, generally. My area is fashion, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. So just moving forward, I thought I would show you an image from this exhibition that I did. So when I was at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City in the 90s, late 90s, my thesis project was on the relationship between the car industry and advertising and marketing cars to women. And so that was what I explored. I explored how advertisers actually used imagery, how they used fashion, how they used upholstery and certain features of cars to appeal to the woman consumer. Because ultimately, it was pretty well known that the women often made the final decision about what car was purchased. So it was kind of interesting research, and I had a really fun time with it. And one of the outgrowths of that research was an exhibition called Driving Fashion, Automobile Upholstery from the 1950s. And what we showed in the exhibition was not only that very close link between fashion and the automobile industry, but we also explored the actual upholstery that was used within the cars and how the styling in the 50s, I mean, that was such a dramatic moment for incredible styling in terms of the interiors and exteriors of the car, and it's certainly filtered down into the upholstery. And they were using some of the most technologically advanced fabrics in those eras as well. So it was really quite fun to explore it from that angle. And one of the cars that I think represented what kind of really what this relationship was about was a car created by Dodge in 1955 and 1956 called the Dodge La Femme. And as you can tell from the title, this was certainly made for women, marketed to women. And it was this incredible vehicle. So here, by appointment to Her Majesty, the American woman. Here is an image of the car. Now, for the first time anywhere, a car glamorously, personally yours. So this was really an attempt to it wasn't just about the family car. This was a car that was a very high fashion car specifically for the woman. And we never found the car for the show. We ended up having a 1957 Thunderbird we got from a private collector. It was fantastic. It was in the lobby of the gallery, and we loved it. But we really wanted to find that La Femme. We never did. But what was really great about the car is that, so it's not only the color tone. So 1955, they introduced it in pink, these shades of pink and white. The next year, it was shades of purple. But they coordinated the upholstery and accessories for the vehicle. So you purchase the car, and you would get a sun, a hat, a parasol, a handbag, and that's the upholstery that was actually created for the vehicle. So again, we never found the car with the original upholstery, but we went to a automobile upholstery, somebody who did reproductions, who was located in Paterson, New Jersey, and we were able to actually get a reproduction made of the La Femme upholstery, which is what it looks like. So that was very close to the color and what it actually appeared like in the actual car. So fast forward a number of years, I curated an exhibition called Think Pink at the Museum of Fine Arts that was open a few years ago, and it was really about the color pink in fashion, in culture, the gender associations with the color pink. When did pink become more firmly associated with women? And really, it is a 1950s post-World War II phenomenon. Because if you think about the World War II era, this is a moment, men are returning from the war, women are returning to the kitchens, the very specific gender roles are kind of embraced because it's this return to normalcy after a very difficult moment in time. So I curated this exhibition called Think Pink. I really wanted to get the car for the lobby of the hotel, the museum. I found it, actually. The Chrysler Historic Collection has a La Femme. And we actually went back and forth about, can we get the car here to Boston? We talked about getting it on a flatbread, getting it here, and in the end, we couldn't get it into the museum. So we had trouble with the doors and kind of the span that you would need to actually get it around the corner into the gallery. So it was a bit of a loss. I was quite sad, but I was really happy to find it. And so this is an image of the exhibition, and just to kind of show you how the car itself would have been related to the 1950s, obviously, but I really looked at the color pink in history, and the images on the left are some 1950s dresses. And the 1950s was really about this era. It was this era of hyper-femininity. And again, it was this embracing of these traditional gender roles after the war. And so that was kind of the angle I was looking at to fit this car into. So anyway, maybe a future exhibition. I'd love to get it here someday. And here's just a close-up of one of the Museum of Fine Arts Christian Dior dresses from the 1950s that I think really represents that exuberant femininity that was very much a part of fashion. It was very much a part of industrial design, car design, home interiors. If you think about appliances of the era, all those pastel-toned appliances, the pink bathrooms, for example, very much a part of the visual culture of the era. So fast forward to the current day, and my title is not coming up. But anyway, this is our current exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts. It's called #TechStyle. You see it over here. This is the introductory gallery I'm showing you. It explores the contemporary fashion and its relationship to the world of technology. So we are looking at we go a little bit back in time, but generally what we are looking at is how new processes, new production processes like 3D printing, digital printing on fabric, interactive garments, interactive textiles, LED-embedded textiles are changing the way designers design today. And so it's a 3-gallery show in our Foster Gallery. We opened it on March 6th. It's running through July 10th. I'd encourage you all to go see it. We have some video footage playing out in the exhibit hall out here if you want to go have a look at that. This shows you the introductory gallery to the exhibition. This is covering some of the pioneers who've been working with this fashion technology nexus for the last 10, 15 years. So we have people like Hussein Chalayan, I'll show you on the left, Alexander McQueen, who started working with 3D printing and digital printing on fabric quite early on in his career, and Issey Miyake and Rei Kawakubo, both Japanese designers. Miyake in particular has always been working with these incredibly high-tech textiles. He was one of the first to actually weave metallic thread into textiles in the 80s. He was exploring this really early on, and now those are the kind of textiles that have the conductive wires that now have that interactivity that everyone is so interested in. So we felt like we had to cover the pioneers in this area. And as it relates to cars, there are a number of overlaps with cars here, but specifically I want to show you the work of a woman by the name of Lauren Bowker, who heads a design atelier in London called The Unseen. She is a very young designer who studied science, biology, as well as textile design, and wanted to merge the two fields in a really interesting way. So what she did is she developed this special color-changing dye that reacts to the environment. It reacts to your surroundings in specific ways. One of the earlier manifestations of this was one that measured CO2 levels. So if you were in London and you were wearing a garment embedded with this dye, it would be completely black or gray. You went out into the countryside and it was a different color entirely. So she's actually applied this dye change, this color change dye, to monitor. It can react to heat, it can react to wind, it can react to temperature. We have two pieces in the show. One is reacting to ambient light in the gallery, the other is reacting to heat. So I'd encourage you to see it because one, you can actually see the color changing. Here's Lauren here. What she wants to do with her team is capture the unseen. So through textiles, through using this special dye that she's developed, she wants to figure out how you can capture what is not visible to the naked eye, that is in the environment, and it can be reflected in the garments that you're wearing. It's really quite amazing work. So we have 2 capes that are leather, embedded with this special dye. What is interesting, I think, from a car's perspective, is that she worked with Formula One race cars to use this dye on the body of a car. It was in a wind tunnel, and it would measure, it basically tracked air pressure. So as it was in the, and so that helped them in terms of designing a faster vehicle, essentially. So it tracked aerodynamics by measuring the friction across the surface in real time, essentially. And here's just a Formula One race car. I couldn't get too much information from her. I kept saying, do you have an image? Do you have more info? And she said, I can't divulge it. It's all still top secret, but she's working with them. So it's really quite fascinating. I think the applications that are being explored through this kind of fashion and textile technology arena that have much broader application, and that's one thing we're really trying to look at in the exhibition. Another designer in the show is a designer by the name of Hussein Chalayan, who is a Cypriot-born, London-based designer who has always been, again, kind of like Issey Miyake in Japan, has always been looking at this fashion technology idea. He is really more of a performance artist. His work is more conceptual in a way, but in the early 2000s, 2006, 2007, he introduced this dress, which is a remote control dress. And he worked with industrial designers who normally work with the airplane industry to create this fiberglass garment that came out on the runway. There was a little boy with a remote control on the runway who controlled the panels that lifted up and down. It's a slightly more conceptual. He's questioning the idea of what garments are, what they can become, what they will be in the future, and will they have minds of their own? Will they operate separately from your body? Will they function outside of your body in the future? And that's what he did too with this current dress on the right. It's a red dress called the Possessed dress. And again, it has robotics underneath. It premiered at a ballet at Sadler's Wells in London. The dancer was dancing and the dress was moving separately from the dancer, and it was all choreographed together. So very kind of a lot of foresight. He's a really interesting designer. Collaboration is a really important part of a lot of these pieces that are in the show. So the ones that are the most effective that we've included are really the result of a true and amazing collaboration between computer programmers, scientists, technologists, mathematicians. Really, it's incredible what's happening. There's this incredible energy and dynamism between these industries right now, and you're really seeing a lot of that happen in fashion. So this is an image of the performance gallery. It's divided into 2 sections. Performance is about how garments perform within they interact with their environment, they interact with their wearer, they might interact with your device. On the left here, if you can see, this one on the far left is a design, it's a dress by designers in London called Cute Circuit. It's completely covered in micro LEDs, and you can send video animations to it, you can tweet it. They had invented at one point what they called the soft cell phone. It was basically a cell phone you wear rather than a hard device. So again, the future applications are pretty amazing when you think about what these designers are doing. Closer to home, the other thing we wanted to emphasize in the show is the incredible work that's being done right in our backyard. You know, Boston's a technology hub. Here we are at MIT. This is a dress that was a collaboration between Neri Oxman here at the MIT Media Lab. She's the head of the Department of Mediated Matter, and Iris van Herpen, who is this incredibly amazing, futuristic fashion designer who hails from the Netherlands. She showed in Paris in 2013. This is a 3D printed cape and skirt. She came to Neri Oxman at MIT because she wanted to create a garment that was a mixture of hard and soft materials, so it could be formed into an actual garment. Prior to this, it was only the hard material that you could print with. So this was quite innovative. 2013, came down the runway. I thought we have to have this for the collection. It represents this incredible moment in time in terms of what's going on between fashion and technology. So we acquired it for the museum, and it's really was the inspiration behind the show. And it's one thing we really have sought to emphasize in the exhibition are these really incredible connections to Boston, because so much is being developed here that is having an impact on the fashion world internationally and globally. And here's another dress by local designers, Nervous System. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're in Somerville. They created the first 3D printed dress that came off of a printer ready to wear. So it's these articulated pieces. It comes off. You can put it on your body. Really amazing work. As soon as they showed this, Museum of Modern Art in New York acquired it. So we commissioned from them their most recent iteration of what they call their kinematics dress. This is in the show, and it is one that you can customize. And so when we talk to designers these days, most of them think that the customization is what is going to be key in the future when we think about the future of fashion. So this, you can go to their website, there's an app, you can customize it to your body shape, you can change the neckline, you can change the hemline, you can change where the petals fall on your body, and then you can order it and you have a custom-made dress. So anyway, this is just kind of a little sample of what we have in the show. It's up through July 10th. We have a number of other kind of processes, digital printing, laser cutting, LED embedded fabrics, a number of other garments that are voice activated. So it's an exciting show. It's a fun show to come see. I hope you come see it. There's another one I didn't have an image of, but there's a group, 2 people in London doing amazing work at Central St. Martin's with laser fusing and laser bonding of fabrics, where they're using that to create pattern, and they're using it to seam garments rather than thread. So they're thinking about zero waste process, and everything is done using this laser high heat laser fusion process. So, we tried to kind of address the present as well as the future of fashion, and I hope you come see it. Thank you.
Oh, never mind. Thanks, Michelle. And the collection that Michelle mentioned, it was the Fred Scharf collection. Is that right? It is amazing. It's a national treasure. And if you're interested in automotive design from that critical period in the 1950s, there is nothing else like it. So the show that was at the museum was just fantastic. And I think that collection is moving to the museum. Is that right? Yeah. So that's very exciting. Our next speaker is Mary Gostansky, who is Vice President of Engineering and Program Management for Delphi. In this role, she's responsible for driving common processes within the global engineering organization. She was appointed as a member of the Powertrain Systems executive staff in 2006 as the Divisional Director of Engineering, Customer Satisfaction, and Program Management. 2012, she was named as Powertrain's Vice President of Engineering, Operations, and Customer Satisfaction, and in 2014, she was appointed to the Corporate Engineering team as VP of Engineering, Launch Readiness, and Program Management. She was named as one of the 100 leading women in the North American automotive industry by Automotive News, and she holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering as well as a master's degree in manufacturing management, both from Kettering University. Mary, thanks for being here today.
So what you probably gathered from that introduction is I also have the record for the longest titles at Delphi. In all seriousness, I have been in the automotive now for 36 years. It was before Kettering, it was General Motors Institute, so it was a car company, and it was the way that you did your training hands-on. And so over the years, I've seen this transition, but I have to admit, I wasn't sure how fashion was going to connect with the topic, so it was a very interesting presentation. But just like technology has impacted fashion, and you can see the connection to automotive, Delphi has really transitioned from an automotive supplier to a technology company. Partly because as the technology is evolving, the consumers are demanding different solutions for the vehicles, and partly because as the automotive complexity increases, we need the technology to be able to offer the solution. So it's on both sides. So in Delphi, we like to think of the spaces as safe, green, and connected. And we've looked at them in their spaces and that they each have their own role in automotive. And our divisions in Delphi even somewhat align with that and have over the years. And so let's just look at what's been going on. Automated driving. You can't really turn on a news station without someone talking about automated driving. I was out in California last week, and for the first time I had the Google car drive by me, and I'm like, there it is. I finally saw the Google car live, and I was all excited. But really what that has done is it's increased consumer awareness for safety, for active safety features, which is really the intent. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Fuel prices, can you believe how low they are? And will they continue to stay that low? Well, for a while. And because of that, there's a lot of question, well, what does that mean for the regulatory? Well, if you've traveled to places like Beijing and you've looked at the air quality, you say it really isn't going to impact that stringent regulation. That's going to stay in place. More fuel economy, more CO2, and that's driving a whole slew of new solutions for internal combustion engines to be able to meet those requirements. Connectivity demand, higher demand than ever. But if you looked at the J.D. Power scores recently, right? The whole space, that whole space around the infotainment and in the response to that remains the highest dissatisfier, right? And it has been for the past 5 years. So consumers want it, but they still keep telling us, you're not close. Automotive suppliers, OEMs, you still haven't given me what I want, which is a seamless transition from my life outside the vehicle to inside the vehicle. And the Internet of Things. It's impacted everyone. And now, for the first time, big data, which we heard at lunch, and cybersecurity are automotive terms. So very new for us in this space. Millennials. We now have all agreed that they haven't stopped buying vehicles. For sure, they may wait a little bit longer, but they're going to eventually buy them. Interestingly enough, what they weigh as importance is a little different than perhaps my generation, even though pink wasn't my strong color, and what I looked for in a vehicle was really, how does it drive? How much horsepower is there? But millennials today put a little bit more credibility on how safe is it? How convenient is it? Does it have the connected features that I want? So they're looking for something different in the vehicle. All of these features, though, in my real message and for the MIT in the room, is it's driven this explosion of software. Software required to enable that and to support the complexity in the vehicle, which means our industry, Delphi in particular, is growing leaps and bounds in software and associated competencies in our engineering to be able to respond to these and be able to answer all the solutions. So you're probably getting tired of hearing about this, but I would be remiss if I didn't emphasize that your vehicle is by far the most sophisticated piece of technology that you own. And if you look at this chart, it jumps out pretty quickly. There's nothing that compares. First, you might say it's my phone, and well, look at the Android operating system, 12 million lines of code. How about Facebook? That's got to take a lot, right? 61 million lines of code. And when you come back to this, the car is really a giant supercomputer. It has 50 different controllers, and those 50 controllers operate over 100 million lines of code. And you may not believe that, but when you start adding up all the subsystems, you go, yeah, I can see how it's possible, right? In Delphi, it's been an interesting evolution for us. In all of our products, we sat back and we said, let's add up how many lines of code do we ship every day. So of all our components that are going out the door, all those controllers that we ship around the world, how many lines of codes do we ship? And last year, 2015, we finished adding it up and it was 20 billion. 20 billion lines of code that go out the door every day. And we thought, wow, I wonder what it was 5 years ago. 200 million. So in 5 years, we went from shipping 200 million lines of code out the door to 20 billion lines of code. And by 2020, our projection is 200 billion lines of code. So we're going to take the same products, we're going to take those solutions, but we're going to take software and all that electronic content, and we're going to use it to respond to the increased requirements and demand. So what's driving all this? I have to start with the regulatory world. And when I look at this chart, what I didn't say, 36 years in the auto industry, 34 were in our powertrain division. So I grew up with engines and all the internal combustion solution, right? That's where my heart was. And so when someone said to me, what do you think of regulation? The very first thing that came to mind is the center chart, right? It's all about fuel economy and emissions. And we love that because for us, every time the regulation gets a little more stringent, it challenges our engineers to say, what's the next solution? And how do we continue? And we've done a very good job of continuing to improve that internal combustion engine, which is why by 2025, the IHS still projects that more than 95% of the cars sold will have an internal combustion engine in it. And it's here to stay for a while, and it's because of all those improved performance, but also improved fuel economy and CO2 performance that have allowed that internal combustion to stay there. But now we have to look at safety, and so safety comes to mind. What's going on in the world of safe? Is it going to become regulated? We've already evolved from passive to active safety, right? And now we all expect these active safety features. A couple months ago, more than 20 OEMs stood up and said, we are going to put automatic emergency braking in each vehicle produced by 2022 in the US. Each new vehicle will have automatic emergency braking. In Delphi, we all did this. One, of course, it's going to be more opportunity to sell those solutions, but more importantly, because it really is going to impact the amount of accidents on the road, and that is going to in turn save lives, and that's what it's all about. It's interesting as the US 5-star NCAP really starts catching up with the Euro NCAP. I'm not even sure if automatic emergency braking is going to have to be put into that 5-star requirement because the OEMs have already stood up and said we're going to do it, and many of them, by the way, are going to be there far ahead of 2022 because it's the right thing to do. Fuel economy and emission, we talk about that. The regulations are getting more stringent, and when you look at 2020 to 2025, depending on where you are in the world, there are requirements that not only have to be met, but if you don't meet them as an OEM, there's stiff penalties. And they're severe. They're extremely severe. We're sitting here in the US, so you're maybe not as familiar with Europe, but by 2021, it's 95 grams of CO2 per kilometer. That's the target that the fleet average, so that's the fleet average of everything they sell that year, has to be able to meet that average, right? If they do not meet that, they will pay 95 euros per gram that they're over per vehicle that they sell that year. Now, I will just tell you, pick any OEM, put whatever European OEM name you want to stick in there, and you do the math based on what they have today, it's a big penalty. It's in the billions, okay? So if you don't believe that OEMs are very focused on solving this and putting the right solutions in the vehicles, that then the consumer will buy, because you might say, being MIT, right? Just make them all electric vehicles. This is easy, right? We'll just get rid of it. There's only one problem. You have to make them affordable, and if they're not affordable, and if the consumer doesn't trust the fact that they're comfortable having that electric vehicle, guess what? They're not going to be able to meet the requirement because they won't sell them, because it's based on what you sell, not based on what you offer. So a big challenge. And then connectivity, I put that up here because I really think that the automotive community has come together in a very different way where connectivity is concerned. Everyone wants connectivity. It's driving more and more solution, but it really does drive some concern. How do you do it? How do you enable vehicle-to-vehicle communication, the vehicle to the infrastructure? How do you do that? You need to have a dedicated communication. We all have heard DSRC. That needs to not only be dedicated, but you need to make sure that it's available. So we've all had our problems, right? Connecting to Wi-Fi. I was in the hotel across the street there at the Marriott, and all of a sudden, maybe everybody decided they were going to use their computers at the same time last night, and pretty soon that file I was trying to download just, felt like it was in the black hole or something. It never did come through because it was just too much demand. You can't have that happen with vehicle solutions when you're depending on that vehicle-to-vehicle communication, when you're using that as part of your safety and your communication solutions. So it's an important topic that we're all taking up the flag and making sure that happens. Cybersecurity. You want to be able to do all this, but you have to make sure it's safe and secure. So for the first time, the Auto ISAC has been formed, and Delphi was the first supplier to actually join that Auto ISAC because we want to be part of the solution. We want to say, look, if anybody hears about an intrusion, because the one thing about cybersecurity is, you're secure today, And the one thing you know for sure is somebody's going to find a way to break through tomorrow, because they do, because they go to MIT and they love to hack, right? I mean, it's a very different world today. What I have to tell the engineers every time I leave our development centers, I don't want to get a call from the company across the street. Please stay out of their material. Don't prove to me how well you can hack, because they always want to do this. But the point is, it's going to happen. And so this auto ISAC, what it's meant to do is to share, as soon as someone's aware of an intrusion, share it across the board so we all can get out in front of it, so we all can provide the solution so that the consumer doesn't have to worry about it. And then finally, big data. We can debate who owns it, but that's not the important point. The important point is that consumer privacy is met while the data is available for us to do the right things with it, to help monitor how your vehicle is performing, to help improve the reliability of your data, of your vehicle, to help make things safer, because that's what it's about. We're not trying to figure out what your bank account number is, right? We're really trying to use that to help that vehicle to be a better automotive. So for the OEMs, and many of you are represented here today, this technology disruption creates all kinds of opportunities, but they're challenges. And they're challenges that the OEMs come to Delphi as a supplier and say, how are you going to help us with this? The first thing I have to talk about is computing power. And computing power, interestingly enough, we put our first electronic engine control in vehicles 35 years ago. And we think about that as soon as you can electrify something, as soon as you put a controller, you've created an intelligence. You've created a way to manage it, to maybe even provide some machine learning to help it perform better. But that was 35 years ago. Today, we need this leading edge, fast computing technology, and it has to be able to have not only the processing, but the ability to handle all those lines of code that I just said. So you need to have the capacity and the memory. And even a way to future-proof a bit, right? You can't put on this controller that just barely handles the lines of code in that vehicle today. You need a way to expand to all these new features. The important thing, and I want to mention this, and I'm going to say it a couple times, is you have to bring it in at automotive grade. So historically, technology in the automotive industry always lagged, right? And so we always considered ourselves an automotive supplier because we'd watch the tech community. We'd watch what's going on, and we'd see the latest in the chip come in, and it would be put into somebody's computer, and we'll say, yeah, let's give it a few years. And that few years would be 5 years, 10 years, 15, often 20 years before we said, yeah, okay, it looks like it's stable enough, it's reliable enough, now let's take it and put it in our engine controls, or let's put it in our latest infotainment system. We feel good about it. Today, the latest technology launches, and as it's launching into the tech world, into the latest laptop that you may purchase, it's also being put into Delphi's multi-domain controller at the exact same time. But we still need to make sure it's automotive grade. I have to say that again. But why? Why is that lag gone, and why are we doing it at the same time? Because the requirements, the automotive complexity has increased so much that it's the only way to provide these solutions. It's the only way to do it well. The Internet of Things, I'd be remiss if I don't talk about this, right? It's everywhere, and it's driving the demand for broad-end devices. And as soon as you do that, again, got to come back to that automotive thinking, right? You have to find a way to do it safe and secure. That has to be our priority. And then finally, within Delphi, what we're seeing is this convergence of safe, green, and connected. We find that we can't talk about safe, green, and connected without the other. We cannot provide a solution for an OEM or to the ultimate consumer without having both of them or all three of them working together to provide that system that helps solve the problems. So, how do we make it all possible? Now, this is an interesting topic. This is kind of like not thinking about how fashion impacts automotive. Think about what makes it work in your vehicle. I call the electrical architecture, that's the wiring, right? Our CEO doesn't like when I call it that because it doesn't seem very attractive, but it really is. It's lots of wiring and it's lots of connectors, and it's what makes it possible. You don't see it, but it really functions like the nervous system of your body. It's connected to everything. I put some proof points up here because it's amazing to me. If you were to take your electrical architecture out of your vehicle, stretch it out, today it's over 1.5 miles long. 1.5 miles of copper, oh, by the way, some aluminum too, because we've got to find ways to make it a little bit lighter because that gets pretty heavy. and in 280 connectors. The systems we're working on that'll be launching in the next couple of years, they're 2.5 miles long, 350 connectors. So you can see that there's a lot to make sure that you have power where you need it, your diagnostics are flowing through. The important thing, though, that's changing is the signal. Your transfer, your data transfer requirements are so much higher. You have to put a lot more data, and you have to be able to do it quickly. So how fast? 65 megabits per second is what the data speeds are today on our Ethernet. Now, for the MIT students in the room, you probably are going, yeah, okay, I get that. For those of you that don't calculate 65 megabits every day, blink your eye. 15,000 pieces of data have to move in that one blink. That's 65 megabits per second. Tomorrow, what we're designing in the future, you have to increase your ability to move data by more than 2,000%, 1.5 gigabits per second. So blink your eye again, 100,000 pieces of data need to move. So what you should be getting a pretty good grip of that there's a lot of things that happen on this just wire harness, right, with a lot of connectors. More importantly, you have to be able to make these split-second decisions, and you have to do them reliably, and you have to take in a lot of data and give it the right answer and control the vehicle. So the computing power has to increase. So where we were designing, and I mentioned this intelligence, and we started putting these controllers on the vehicle, and today you hear 50, it's a lot of maybe medium to high-end controllers that are being added at the radar sensor or at the infotainment system, and they're all over your vehicle, right? Tomorrow, what they're going to be are these supercomputers. So we call them a multi-domain controller, which means it's a supercomputer that processes data 34,000 times faster than the average human, and we send all the data to that central point, analyze it, and then spit out the answer or the controls for the vehicle. Now, I don't want you to think that it's only one because, again, we're automotive and we design to automotive grade. We have system redundancy. We make sure that there's backup and safety in mind. So we do think that your major subsystems of the vehicle will still be isolated. So you'll have your active safety, you'll have your infotainment space, you'll have your powertrain. But you could really see a handful of these supercomputers in the vehicle, right? Now what does that do? It allows you to then put only basic operation at the source. So you think about these radar sensors and cameras, LiDAR, all these things that we're trying to integrate into the vehicle, you can do them a lot smaller packaging, which means you don't see them. You walk around Delphi's automated vehicle that we highlighted at CES in 2015 and 16, and you'd be hard pressed to find and count 20 sensors on the out of that vehicle because they package so nicely. That one, by the way, is set up with this central computer. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about safety and how this all works together. This is a great example, our automated drive vehicle, of this convergence of safe, green, and connected. First of all, we have the latest in connected infotainment. So when you get inside the vehicle, you see this cockpit controller, and it's not only there to interface with the driver anymore. By the way, it's interesting because it has some configurable, put what you want on the screen, right? Because everybody's a little different. It has capability to pair and allow your iPhone to be there along with whatever was designed in the vehicle for the infotainment feature because everybody wants to have a little more flexibility. And then we took this suite of sensors, and it's 20 plus sensors on our vehicle. It includes radar, it includes vision, it includes LiDAR, and it includes vehicle to infrastructure. So vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to all the traffic lights and everything around, as well as the capability of interfacing with the people. And then we create what we call sensor fusion. And sensor fusion is designed for a few reasons. One, each sensor, a radar, camera, all have their different strengths. Some of them are okay with sunlight, some of them get blinded in sunlight, just like a human, by the way, right? And so you want to make sure that you have enough redundancy. You want to make sure if one sensor can't clearly figure out who's standing next to the vehicle or in front of the vehicle, the other one can pick that up. Additionally, when all of these sensors work together, they can get a much better picture of what's coming down the road or what is around that 360 of that vehicle. So we basically take all of those sensors and connect them to that supercomputer, that one brain, the conductor of the orchestra, and we process all that information and make the decisions then to whether the vehicle is safe to proceed or not. So again, it's not about As LiDAR comes down in cost, Delphi's working on solid state. It'll be a lot more affordable than the beacon, even though it's kind of cute on the Google car, right? But it's not about, as LiDAR comes in, all the other sensors go away. No, it just provides another view of everything around that vehicle. And then finally, if you haven't guessed by now, you know I'm going to come back to software. It is a lot of algorithms, and we have a lot of partners, and we take advantage of those partners. We have a long-standing relationship with companies like Mobileye, who you may know, right? And Mobileye is great at providing vision algorithms, and we take advantage of that because, as I said, 100 million lines of code and growing. There's enough work to go around. There's enough evolution to go around, so we really do partner with those that have the strongest and have those algorithms perfected and put them in the vehicle. And then we do a lot of driving. And what are we doing when we drive? Well, we did a coast-to-coast 2015. And in our coast-to-coast trip, everybody said, what were you doing? We said, we were collecting data. They go, really? We go, yeah, we collected 4 terabytes of data. And I'm not exaggerating, our engineers, we actually had to keep trading them out every day or two because they were so exhausted because they were going 24 hours. Every evening when they stopped, they were processing that data and they were adjusting and making sure that the algorithms had that latest input and it would perfect the way that vehicle drove. That's machine learning, right? What we're trying to do, liken it to a new driver. 15-year-old goes to driver training. They're book smart. They get it. They know what they need to do. Can you put them behind the wheel and let them go? No, right? What do you do as a parent? You sit next to them, and before they even start the car, you instruct them, right? And then when they first pull out of the driveway, you say, no, stop. You did that wrong. You didn't look, right? And you're re-instructing them along the way. But after about a year of driving, they've learned now. Their database is there. They're feeling more comfortable. They've seen now more experiences. They've had more experiences. They've seen more conditions, and they know how to handle things, and they can react more appropriately. That's really what an automated driving is. It's built on this active safety foundation. By the way, I have to say this, because I would be remiss, that active safety, those active safety that really enables automated driving, those features are available today, right? Like automatic emergency braking. That's why we did the drive, by the way, to show how well those active safety features work, to show that we want you to put them in the vehicles. We want OEMs to integrate it. More importantly, we want regulators to put that in place and get them in each and every vehicle because it really breaks my heart when I go to a dealership and realize that unless I'm buying a premium model, I can't even get access to some of these active safety features. They're not even offered on some of the lower cost vehicles. So we're really trying to put that push. So finally, in 2016, we were at the CES, and we took our automated driving, and we had it there again, and everybody said, well, what's new? Well, what's new is we demonstrated the first drive with vehicle to vehicle. So we demonstrated how vehicle to vehicle would work, how that helps you, and we also then showed vehicle to infrastructure, so the traffic lights were connected to us, and vehicle to pedestrian. So certainly a lot to happen. How about in the world of green? What's going on with green? Well, first of all, I didn't mention green. You probably heard connected and you heard safety for that automated drive. Really, all that input coming in from those sensors can be fed into your powertrain controller. And oh, by the way, if you know your road is going to be flat for many miles, guess what? You don't need as much fuel. And so you can tune how your fuel is being used to help save the fuel economy. So in the area of green space, certainly OEMs are looking for solutions to meet the 54.5 miles per gallon. And they will tell you that although the internal combustion engine has made a lot of evolution over the years, you really need to do something with electrification. The problem with it is the cost of a lithium battery and some of the large motors technology has not really come down to where the consumer wants to pay for it, and there's still some hesitation about a pure electric vehicle. So this latest thing that has come out that is gaining a lot of momentum is 48 volts, and it's not changing from a 12-volt architecture to 48 volts. I have to say that because as soon as I say it, everybody says 12 volts goes away. No, it doesn't. It's 48-volt mild hybrid. So what that means is you're taking a 48-volt system, you're taking your architecture, you're making it capable of dual voltage, you're adding in a small motor, 48-volt motor, a small battery to capture the extra power from that, and you do your brake regeneration so that you're getting some of that power. It enables you to help the engine just a little bit. More importantly, it gives you some extra power because now that the vehicles are so efficient, and they've downsized the engine to be able to do everything that we've done to date, right? They're out of power, and a lot of people are not crazy about stop-start, especially in the U.S., right? The Europeans believe that you should never let your vehicle idle. It's just wrong. You should always turn off the engine. In the U.S., we say, no, we don't really like that, because when we turn off the vehicle, we can't be the first one through the light. That's me, okay? I have to be the first one, and I don't like that hesitation. And so the OEMs are struggling because they have no more power. And so what they've done is putting 48 volts gives them that boost of power to put in things like an electric turbocharger. So now, basically, the turbocharger is making its own air. It doesn't have to wait for the engine, right? And so it's ready, and it takes off. And what does it do? It's impressive. We put together a vehicle, and we saw as much as 25% on average of low-end torque increase. And so for a little bit extra, you're able to really get great performance. More importantly, you're able, on average, to get 15% improvement above and beyond everything that we know how to do with an internal combustion today. And it's additive, right? It's not an either or, it's an additive thing. And so it's a good stepping stone that OEMs around the globe are looking, and interestingly enough, if you don't believe me, look at IHS. The IHS projection by 2025 shows over 12 million units of 48-volt mild hybrids. And I have to, some of you are going to say, and this is not a lesson on electrification, but I'll make the point that you're going to say, well, mild hybrids didn't work and nobody makes them anymore. And that is true, but they were higher voltage. And when they were higher voltage, they were more cost. And so, again, it's about that best value solution. And 48 volts offers that. Finally, connectivity. Connected car is not a simple thing. Yes, we know the Internet of Things is driving a lot. Everybody in this room has some form of it in your home. You have a Wi-Fi thermostat. You have a security camera that you enable, and you can view it from your phone, probably right here, and see who's actually standing outside your house. And why do you do that? Well, in many cases, because it makes your life safer, easier. In many cases, for the MIT students, right, it's just because you can, and it's fun, right? And that's why. Well, you want that same thing when you walk into the vehicle, so that Internet of Things is disrupting the automotive space the same way that it does your home, right? And it starts with this need to bring your own device in, and I have to tell you, that is not a small thing, because when you get in that vehicle, you just expect that it will connect to Bluetooth, and you will not have to say 3 or 4 times, please try to connect my phone. And you want to be able to talk on it, you want to be able to hear it, stream your music from it, and you want to be able to do it. But once you do that, once you have brought your own device into that vehicle, you've now opened it up to security issues, right? That's where the cybersecurity comes in. And so now we have to worry about how is that vehicle performing, what's going on. We have to have ability to monitor it by data, to actually deal with the security issues. And then finally, we need this low-cost way that doesn't inconvenience the consumer to provide upgrades, fixes, if you will, or upgradable solutions, and that's over the air. And so OTA, or over the air, I want to make the point that in Delphi, we kind of think of that as the enabler for connected car, not the problem. Because many people will say, oh, over the air, that's the problem. No, it really is the enabler. If you're going to go to connected car, you can't do it without having that over the air capability. And as a consumer, you'll demand it. So what are my key takeaways? Well, first of all, macro trends and disruptors are creating new growth opportunities. We love that, but it's taking all the technology that you're doing here at MIT and all the universities all over the world, and what everyone is developing in this tech space. It's requiring all that in order to enable it. I want you to take away from this that electrical architecture, yeah, just that wiring and connectors, that if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be able to enable all this automotive complexity. Finally, or secondly, the active safety algorithms are really the foundation for automated driving. It's not about whether you ever get to level 4 autonomous. It's really about just get to level 2. Because guess what? By level 2, you have about 80% of the safety benefit at about 20% of the cost. So just get to level 2 and we'd all be pretty happy, because that really is what's going to drive down accidents and save lives. And consumers are demanding this connected car. You need to have that capability. And then finally, as the regulations get more stringent, 48-volt hybrid solutions really becomes this best value electrification. And then finally, to pull that all back together, continue to think of safe, green, and connected spaces in this convergence. Think about solutions. Think about it's automated driving, it's a connected car, but they're really all there to help make your vehicle more safe, keep you connected, and help meet those fuel economy and emission regulations. Thank you.
Going to introduce John really quickly here. John is professor of mechanical and ocean engineering at MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. And you may be asking yourself, what is a guy who studies ocean engineering doing here? But his research addresses the problems of navigation mapping for autonomous mobile robots. He was the team leader for MIT's DARPA Urban Challenge team, which was one of 11 teams to qualify for the Urban Challenge final event and one of 6 teams to compete the race. And he was the co-director of the Ford MIT Alliance, an area head for ocean science and engineering at the MIT Department of Mechanical Engineering. John, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks a lot. So I have many of you are from the press, right? So my goal for this week was to stay out of the press, actually, because I've been working on a secret project that became unsecret a couple days ago, and this isn't really part of my brief, but has anyone here heard of Deflategate? I led an effort. I recruited 20 faculty colleagues to submit an amicus brief on Tuesday to make the appellate court aware of middle school physics, and this actually grew out of my teaching. So I teach a class measurement and instrumentation at MIT, and I'm obsessed with data. And in fact, so this is something. The amicus brief has a plot of the temperature distribution for 10,000 NFL games. I went back in time. And so I couldn't include a link into the amicus brief, but this is a movie of all the NFL games I could get my hands on, the outdoor temperatures, showing, and then how the football pressures would change from a locker room to the field based on this. But in general, this is football. What does this have to do with self-driving cars? But in general, we live in an age of data, and the impact that massive amounts of data are having on fields of robotics and so forth is pretty amazing. And so in my teaching, I teach measurement, instrumentation, robotics. I'm involved in an assistive technology class that Paul helps out on. I'm involved in a lot of different things, and I really get to do some amazing things and work with amazing people. And the comment about 10 years versus 2 years was really interesting. It's been about 10 years now since about 10 years ago, we were writing the proposal for the 2007 DARPA Urban Challenge. The proposals were due in June 2006. And I was the team leader, but I worked with some really amazing faculty colleagues and students and postdocs. And so we tried to build a vehicle that could drive itself in traffic, competing for a $2 million prize in a DARPA competition. And these DARPA competitions, they don't come around too often. This was the third of a series of self-driving challenges, and Gil Pratt, who's going to speak next, has led the most recent DARPA Robotics Challenge, which was a disaster response scenario with humanoid robots. But they sort of bring this convergence of talent and energy, and we had a vehicle. This is what's called Velodyne laser scanner data from driving up Mass Ave from MIT to Harvard. So the sensor gives you about 1 million data points a second. It's what's used by the Google car. We tried to use vision to perceive the road in real time. We used a very advanced motion planning algorithm. We had a lot of computers on our car for the day. It was 40 processing cores that used 3.5 kilowatts of power, which is kind of crazy. But but as a professor, our product is our people, and our students and what they go on to do. And in fact, in this picture here, the third head in from the left, who's shaded, his name's Yoshi Kawada. He's one of the key members of the team on the SpaceX team that landed the rocket on the barge in April. This guy, Emilio Frazzoli, is a faculty colleague. His company, Nutonomy, just got $16 million in venture capital funding this week for making a self-driving taxi service in Singapore. This guy, Albert Huang, has a somewhat stealth mode startup, but they have a web page called Optimus Ride that's doing mobility on-demand systems also with this guy here, which is a faculty member. Sartash Karaman's part of that startup. He's in the Aeroastro department at MIT. And this guy, Ed Olson, where's Ed? I just saw Ed here. Ed is here, has joined Gil Pratt at Toyota Research Institute in Michigan, and I'm actually working part-time for Toyota as well with Gil's new effort, which he'll describe next. And it's really our product is our people and our students. And so the self-driving is just a really amazing space to be in this time. And so our DARPA Challenge vehicle had more sensors and more computers than any other team. We were probably over-ambitious, and at the end of the day, we came in 4th place. It was a pretty distant 4th place. We had a few incidents along the way. We had a crash with Cornell, which is kind of fun to watch if you see it on the internet. I have that video, but there's probably not time to show it. It's a lot of fun. But we tried some risky things, and some of those didn't work out so well, but some of them led to really great innovations in the algorithms. And so, for me personally, I've been I get obsessed with things. I was obsessed with Deflategate. I'm obsessed with self-driving cars, and even today. So if you look at what's happened, I think a huge kudos goes to Google, for what they did. You've all probably seen some of these iconic videos. Taking the blind person to Taco Bell. Steve Mann, an activist in the Silicon Valley area for the visually impaired, this is a ride in the Google car in city streets in Mountain View in 2014, and this is the Google prototype, a car with no steering wheel and no brake, what we call a level 4 car. And for me, I'm sort of such a fan and cheerleader for this technology and people like Chris Urmson and the impact that they've had. And there is this potential to really transform mobility, but I also believe that some of the technology is a little misunderstood. And so I would have said we are possibly decades away. But the thing is, when you have folks like Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, visionaries come in with huge investments, it actually compresses the timeline. Someone told me that 10 years to you or me is just a year to Elon Musk. He doesn't agree with the sort of timeline. And so as a researcher at MIT, trying to generate, and I'm talking on sort of MIT behalf here, it's really to inspire our students to take on some of these challenges and make things happen more quickly than they could. But in the spirit of giving a balanced view, I mentioned this obsession with self-driving. I collect data from my commuting. So about a year and a half ago, I captured a month of driving with a dash cam. This is actually with a cell phone, one of my son's friends. Look to the right, all the cars you see, all the traffic. I'm trying to make a left turn. And there are cars coming from my left at very high speed with a mailbox and a tree and a slight hill occluding things. And so I'm trying to do this sort of difficult left turn across traffic, which is probably one of the harder things to learn if you're teaching a teenager to drive. And my oldest is 15 now, so this is all ahead of me. And the only way I was able to pull out was to wave at another driver and sort of have some courage and pull out. And it's sort of a complex negotiation. John Markoff called it the social ballet of driving. And another scenario, so this is from a dash cam driving through Coolidge Corner at night during rush hour. And what the video shows is there's a flashing light from a police car on the left, which is tricky to do with, and there's a police officer waving me through a red light. And then at the next intersection, a police officer is going to stop me at a green light. And so, which you'll see in a minute. And so Mary mentioned all this software, the sort of millions of lines of code. And someone who, in the past, I wrote a lot of software for underwater vehicles. And I don't quite know how do you write the software that says always stop at red lights unless there's a man on the side of the road who's a police officer and he's waving you through. And so there's sort of driving exposes some really hard challenges in artificial intelligence. And machine learning and data all offer promise, but it's still, there's some challenges. And just the achieving robustness. So the next slide is from the same intersection. This is a picture with the sun blinding the camera view. And so what do you see in this picture? Does anyone see the traffic light? Yes. Does anyone see the sun? Does anyone see the police officer standing right here? There's his legs, the shadow, there's his legs. So for me, the big challenges going forward are, I didn't get time to really talk about it, but maintaining the maps. So at the heart of these systems, especially the Google type systems, are maps, very detailed maps. How do we build them? How do we maintain them? How do we deal with adverse weather? How do we interact with people, both inside and outside the car? And how do we achieve robust perception? So I have a lot of thoughts on these topics. I know Gil is talking after me, and I think he's going to present his vision for some of these topics and the different paths forward. And I thought I would just take a few more minutes, since I think I have a couple minutes left, to talk about education, because I talked about the people aspect and how important that is to us. So here at MIT, I'm really not supposed to teach because I'm associate department head, but I was involved in 2 classes this term. And one, I have a postdoc and then a collaborating research scientist, kind of that helped lead an effort, and we called it Duckytown. And I'm going to play you the video for Duckytown. It's about a minute and a half here. Video shows we have little robots that cost about $150 each. Each has a little yellow ducky. And we set up a fake little town, the fictional town of Duckytown. And the challenge for the class was to develop an autonomous Uber system for the town of Duckytown. And it's sort of a 1 robot per child sort of philosophy, where each robot cost, we aimed for $100, it was about $150. Each robot has a Raspberry Pi, it has a camera as the only sensor, it has a very inexpensive $15 platform. The entire class is open source, giving everything away to the world, and the idea is to have a platform of an autonomy class. And as simple and sort of toy this might seem, students use something called ROS, the robot operating system. They have to deal with calibrating cameras, they have to deal with source control, they have to deal with multiple team members checking in pieces of code, how you do testing, how you do validation. A lot of the things that you have in a full-size car, like the Delphi autonomous car that drove 99% across the country, there are little elements in this little toy project that actually translate to that scenario. So, oops, sorry, I ended that a little too soon by accident. But, and another thing that, so this is Andrea and Liam. They were just absolutely amazing in the effort they put in this class. So I'm wearing my official Duckytown tie. And another thing that they did is the class was a role play. So the class, they actually formed a company. It's there on LinkedIn called Duckytown Engineering Company. And Liam is Andrea is the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, and Liam is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. Recruited postdocs and various folks around MIT. This is the staff, and I agreed to do the course only if we had 10 or so students, maybe 12, and they did a massive marketing campaign and had 60 sign up, and then talked me into taking 27 students. And typical MIT. But the robots did various little pieces of technology. So here are the components. So there's an assembled DuckyBot. So $35 computer that runs Linux, $22 motor shield that involves a little bit of soldering. So each student has a certain process as their robot is born that they get it working. They bond with it. A $22 camera, a $15 spare cell phone battery, and a $15 base. And then we throw in typically like a $40 Wi-Fi because connectivity is important. And the different projects, one, for example, is so everyone does some computer vision, and some students focused on actually doing visual object learning. And so here's a video showing the robot detecting cones. And what's interesting is the duckies have orange beaks, and I have another video which I didn't have time to insert, which shows the cone detector misfiring on the beak of the DuckyBot, which gives you an example of things like false detections and some of the challenges. So we had about 6 or 7 different projects, but one last project I'm going to mention and then hand off to Gil is something we call parallel autonomy, which is the idea of having an active safety system that sort of runs in the background and helps with the system. And so one of the teams looked at this parallel autonomy system, so each student created a lane following system. But on top of that, and this is actually Liam's 3-year-old daughter, and the philosophy is to have the user is in charge of the car, but the autonomy system jumps in to keep the car in the lanes and prevent obstacles. So the parallel autonomy system lets Liam's daughter Ingrid steer the car around. It should stop at the red stop lines, and it should avoid obstacles, and it should stay in the lanes. So this is. And we did a big expo for MIT's 100th anniversary of moving across the Charles, and we were a big hit with the under 5 crowd. They really loved. We gave away free duckies, and the students sort of bashed the robots and so forth. The sort of 8-year-olds were mad because they wanted to go faster and they wanted to go over the lines, and the autonomy wouldn't let them do that. But the idea is that everyone can drive safely in Duckytown, even people that are sort of limited. And so that's sort of an inspiration for the future. So we also worked on problems like distributed coordination, so having DuckyBots be courteous to one another, which is something we need a little more of in Boston sometimes. And things like localization, which is the research problem of how your car stays on a map. And so we were using these fiducial markers and and we would sort of make a map in advance and use that to localize the car, which is really not that different conceptually than, say, what Google does and how the Google car navigates with its map. So I'll stop there and look forward to questions in the panel. But thanks for the opportunity to speak, and it's really great to welcome you to MIT, and it's a wonderful topic right now. Our students are really excited about this topic.
Dr. Gil Pratt is CEO of the Toyota Research Institute and launched in 2016. TRI's mission is to enhance the safety of automobiles with the ultimate goal of creating a car that is incapable of causing a crash. Before joining Toyota, Dr. Pratt served as program manager in the Defense Services Offices. Defense Sciences Office at the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, from 2010 to August 2015. Thank you, Dr. Pratt. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. It's really great to be here, and thank you all for coming. I think this field actually is tremendously exciting, and furthermore, it can have a tremendous impact on the quality of life for all of us. So I'm going to give a very short talk. I only have around 10 slides. But I want to leave time for Q&A for all of us. What problems is the Toyota Research Institute trying to solve? The first one, of course, is safety. And the projector's screwing up, so it's not showing the top and the bottom. Or maybe we have to change this out of that mode that you talked about before. It's in the other mode. It's in there. Sorry, guys. This will just take a minute. All right, excellent. There we go, much better. Safety. Okay, so, sorry, a bit of a perfectionist. So, this is a really amazing number, 1.25 million fatalities per year worldwide. That is an extraordinarily high number. Around 30,000 of those happen every year in the US, also a very high number, every single one a terrible tragedy. But it turns out we drive a lot in the United States. And so if you work out fatalities per mile, it's 1 fatality per 100 million miles in the US. So in fact, despite the fact that we have 30,000 fatalities per year because of car accidents, per mile, driving is extraordinarily safe. Okay, even when humans are at the wheel in the US. Other parts of the world, it can be up to 100 times worse. So when you go on vacation, watch out. Okay. In terms of crashes, of course, there are many more crashes, from fender benders to things that are much worse, around 2 reported crashes per million miles in the US. But still, those numbers are very, very small. The reason I'm pointing out fatalities per mile or fatalities per 100 million miles is to make sure that we're grounded in terms of how good car autonomy needs to be to beat people. People are really good at driving safely. You know, when you think about it, it's an extraordinary thing that you can be on a 2-lane highway with nothing but a double yellow line in the middle, going at a combined speed versus each other, 120, 140 miles an hour, separated by an incredibly short distance, and we think nothing of it, that we're trusting the person in the other lane coming the other way not to run into us, right? And yet it works incredibly well. So people are very, very good. And when we build these AI systems, that's the standard that we need to beat, because we want to do better than people. Okay. Besides safety, at TRI, we're also, and this is true actually in the talk that we heard from Ford too, we care a lot about access. And the chart that I have up here is about demographics and looking at the baby boom and its effect on demographics in the United States. So the blue line over here is 2008, the red line is 2030. On the x-axis, we have the distribution of a person's age, and on the y-axis, the total number of people. And what you see is this tremendous shift in our society, which is going to become much older in the next 15 years. Right now, 13% of us are over age 65. In only 15 years, that number will grow from 13% to 20%, which is a tremendous change. 1 in 5 people in the US in 15 years will be over age 65. And in general, the older you get, the less likely it is that you're going to drive on your own. And so your quality of life tends to go down, and access becomes this huge issue. So that's one of the other problems that we're trying to solve. And of course, we're a company that's headquartered in Japan. Guess what? In Japan right now, they're already at 20% over age 65. And between 15 and 20 years from now, it will be 40% over age 65. So they truly have an issue. South Korea, very much the same. China will follow afterwards, but also very, very bad. So how are we going to solve it? Well, for the access problem, what we're going to do is something that is now very familiar and a lot of people talk about, which is we're going to use something similar to a human chauffeur that will drive the car for you. Google is doing it. Lots of other car firms are going to do this too. And the idea is you tell the car, I want to go home, I want to go to the shopping mall, I want to go wherever I want to go. You sit back. Whether the car has a steering wheel or not doesn't really matter very much. You can read the paper, you can talk to your friends. Level 4, level 5, depending on NHTSA or SAE, the car will take you there. How about safety? Do we have to wait until we have the chauffeur to make cars much safer, to address this issue? We actually think the answer is no. We don't think you have to wait. In fact, the car industry, which is, I think, has a lot to be proud of, has been doing tremendous things in order to make cars safer now. A great example is anti-lock brakes. Almost every car sold right now has anti-lock brakes, which makes your probability of having a skid that then results in an accident when you're on ice much less. In the very near future, automatic emergency braking will protect us from smashing into something in the front and has really, I think, tremendous potential. Our thought is that all of these technologies can be thought of as a type of a guardian angel. I'm trying to use a non-automotive term for this thing, which is someone watching over you. And you're in control of the car all the time, but if you're about to do something wrong, and right now with the technology we have now, it's only something that you're about to do very, very soon that's going to be wrong. I'm about to hit this truck in front of me. AEB comes in and puts the brakes on. But they're operating essentially in parallel with you, not in series. It's not me telling the chauffeur to drive the car to there. That's a series way of doing things. The guardian angel works in parallel, and at the last minute, right now, grabs your hand and says, don't do that. Do something different, okay? We think in the future, and not too far future, we can do that on steroids. We could actually have this system, just like the chauffeur system, looking far ahead, saying, I think if you do that, and you continue to do that, you're going to get yourself into a trap, and you will have no choice but to have an accident. So let me intervene a little bit now, and as we get closer and closer, more and more, to try to nudge you out of that bad outcome. And so let me take a look here, and this is the slide I'll spend a little more time on, at advantages and disadvantages between the chauffeur model and the guardian angel model. So first of all, the head of Toyota, Akio Toyoda, loves to drive. In fact, he's a test driver and a race car driver, and when I got the job, or actually when I was interviewing for the job, one of the questions he asked me is, are you sure it's still going to be fun to drive cars? And I assured him that we had a way of making it still fun to drive cars. If you love to drive a car, the idea of a chauffeur that's going to drive you around to different places is not much fun. However, with the guardian angel, you actually can have more fun because the car is there to protect you from harm. And so you can feel safer when you're actually driving the car, and you can enjoy the car a little bit more. How about the duty cycle? How often does the AI need to work? In the case of chauffeur, it has to work all of the time. You completely trust the technology. In the case of the guardian angel, hopefully, unless you're a really bad driver, it's only operating less than 1% of the time. Where's the liability? Well, with the chauffeur, it's clear the person is not driving the car, so the manufacturer takes it all on. In the case of guardian angel, mostly it's the driver, and only every once in a while the guardian angel intervenes and says, no, you really shouldn't do that. How about how competent the system needs to be? Anti-lock brakes don't know how to drive you home, but they still work tremendously effectively if you're on ice to stop your wheels from having a wheel lock. And so What they really need to do is sort of a different level of stuff. But the competence, particularly for Guardian Angel, it's actually not right now to have you never have an accident. Someday we hope to get there, just like the introduction said. But right now what they have to do is not make things worse. The anti-lock brakes on your car don't guarantee that you won't have a crash. But they do, I believe, guarantee they're not going to make it even more likely that you're going to have a crash. They don't make things worse. How about the development? Well, with the chauffeur, we have to wait until it works perfectly in order to use it, at least in some environments. With Guardian Angel, we can apply this Toyota idea of Kaizen, of continuous improvement. And in fact, it's already happening with all of the manufacturers right now with these ADAS systems, these assistance systems that basically intervene at the last minute to try to stop you from having an accident. And we can begin to save those lives much sooner. Driver skills are ignored in the case of chauffeur because the chauffeur is doing all the driving for you. In the case of the Guardian Angel, we're actually tapping into the human skills as much as we can, augmenting them with the skills of the Guardian Angel. And then finally, there's this question of handoff. And we haven't talked very much about that, but one of the bedeviling parts of the car autonomy problem is this human-machine interface. What happens when the autonomy in the car reaches a situation that it can't quite do? The sun is gleaming in its eye. There's suddenly a box that fell off of a truck and is bouncing across the road. With many of the systems now, including the very best of the ones that are out there, the car goes beep, 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 beep. I can't deal with this. It's your turn to drive, okay? This is the handoff problem. And the question is, how much warning does the driver get? And how much warning does the driver need, the human driver need, to get situational awareness and take over the car once again? Unfortunately, presently, there's still a significant gap between how much warning they might get, which is very little, and how much they may need, which is quite a bit if you're asleep, reading the newspaper, talking to your friend to say, uh-oh, I better wake up, figure out what's going on here, and take the wheel of the car. The Guardian Angel system doesn't have that problem because the person is in fact driving all of the time, and the Guardian Angel in parallel is only intervening with that. So that's pretty cool. Now, there have been some statements in the autonomous driving field that you can't get here, you can't get there from here. You can't develop the Guardian Angel stuff and get to the chauffeur system. We think that's false, okay? The technology that goes into both of these things in the future is in fact quite similar. You need systems that can perceive, you need systems that can plan. The only difference is when does it cut over and say the AI is going to drive versus the person's going to drive. And that's a human interface issue that happens at the last minute, but the bulk of the technology is actually quite similar between both of these. So our belief, in addition to all of that, and this goes to this one fatality per 100 million miles, is that most driving is easy, okay? How many of you have been in a car and arrived at home or whatever your destination is and wondered, how did I get here? Right? I think all of us, right, that drive. So it seems some weird thing that the back of our brain in autopilot, I heard someone say, can kind of just do it while we're daydreaming about something else. And so most driving is easy, okay? That's why one fatality per 100 million miles. Some driving is extremely difficult, incredibly hard. Like John showed the example of the policeman giving contradictory instructions which take priority over the light while the sun is gleaming in the windshield. The example I gave of the box that falls off the truck and dances across the road. What are you going to do, right? And so what TRI is focusing on is actually not the bulk of this curve on the left, which is easy, but in fact this very long tail that we believe exists out on the right. Because if you're really going to make this level 4 or level 5 system, which is going to be so good that you can go to sleep or read a newspaper or talk to your friend, it means it has to always work, right? Now, Toyotas, it turns out, drive 1 trillion miles every year. Okay, we make around 10 million cars per year. They last around 10 years, so there's around 100 million Toyotas doing their thing on planet Earth. And they drive around 10,000 miles per year. So that turns out to around 1 trillion miles per year total. How many accidents caused by some error of the machine, let's say in software, will the public put up with if we're driving that many miles per year? And the answer is almost none, okay? And so how good do we have to be? We better figure out this tail of this curve here, right? So that's where we're putting most of our effort. Okay. So let me talk about sort of the punchline of all this stuff. Chauffeur, Guardian Angel, they're built out of the same technologies at their base. We actually believe that they're complementary to each other and are duals of each other. So with the Chauffeur system, right now what we have is a number of technology companies, including us, that are trying to make progress as much as we can up that y-axis from, in this case I use the NHTSA scale, from level 0, which is a standard car now, to level 4, which is a car that will never disengage between where you start and where you end, no matter how bad the weather is, no matter how bad the traffic is, no matter what, okay? In between, level 3 systems supposedly will give you adequate warning if they need to disengage, perhaps up to 15 seconds or 30 seconds to say something bad is coming up, it's time to wake up and retake control of the car. Level 2 systems give you no warning at all. They basically say, beep, 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 it's your turn. Sometimes they don't even beep. You have to watch and decide that it's your turn, which is kind of tough. There's a lot of discussion in the industry about whether we go incrementally up this scale or whether we jump as fast as we can to level 4. I think that discussion is important, but isn't actually the main issue. The main issue is that we actually have another axis that we can go along at the same time. And they're not incompatible, they're in fact synergistic. And that axis is the Guardian Angel axis that's on the right here. And so what Toyota's planning to do, what we are doing, is in fact to do both. And again, the technologies support each other, and this is exactly the kind of curve that we're doing now. We can save a lot of lives on that right-hand side. It doesn't solve all of the issues, okay? Unfortunately, it doesn't solve the problem of driving the blind person to where they want to go. So that's still going to take a little more time. It doesn't solve the problem of the person who otherwise really can't drive and taking them where they want to go. But it does, to some extent, even solve the aging society issue, because if the older person has slower reaction times, it can save them from that. Other sorts of errors that we might make, it can save them from that. So anyway, just to show you that even though the going up straight up the y-axis is extremely hard, especially at the very top, there's another way, and we can get there too. And with that, I'd like to thank you all very much.
We're just going to grab the chairs and we're going to open it up to questions here. We're going to have our entire panel come up. So I'm going to ask one quick question and then I'm going to open it up to everybody else. I usually ask like 22 long-winded multi-part questions, but so I mean, I think you know the interesting thing about the presentations today is there was a design component and there was a technology component that sort of, I'm wondering where they meet and how they get together and how the technology that we're expecting in the next 2 to 10 years, how that integrates with design and how it develops products that people are interested in. Much the way the iPhone was, like it broke the cell phone industry largely because of design, because the technology early on wasn't all that impressive, right? So I'm interested in how those two things meet for consumers. Does that make sense?
Who wants that? Okay, great.
We will ask the design guy.
I think what I enjoy is actually have the engineering community right with me and within the studio, and that's something that we've enjoyed since the beginning of my career and well before that. So the collaboration, and then I think, and it's the opportunities that we can kind of envision that can inspire. That creates that kind of urgency for this collaboration, or this urgency for, hey, let's develop a solution, and let's kind of explore some ideas, is something that I was kind of like contrarian to your discussion where we're not fighting. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of evolve this into a completely different space, and like I mentioned, that's the cool part, I think, moving forward, of what these vehicles could look like, what they should look like, and how the technology will influence their aesthetics. And like I said, that's the soft and squishy part of that. And then there's also the fun part on the consumer acceptance of something that is completely different. But somehow we did it with horse and buggies to cars. So I think we can do it. We can manage that. Anyways, I didn't really answer it, but maybe. Anyways.
So I would add to that, the human-machine interface we think is going to be an extremely important part of this thing. Like right now, we look through a piece of glass at the world with our eyes, and we steer with our hands on this wheel, and we push with our feet on the pedals, right? That's very, very primitive, okay? In the future, the car is going to, if we do decide that we want to drive, is going to assist us in all kinds of ways. Heads-up displays that give the augmented reality, just like what you were talking about with getting rid of the A-pillars and things like that. Think of the other information a car might tell you in the visual field that we don't see now. And we don't really know what that should be like, but it's going to be incredibly exciting to figure that out and what the design of that is to better inform the person. What should the steering wheel feel like when the car wants to warn you, don't go that way? Should it just not go that way? Or should it shake? Should it do, everyone's trying a different way, but there's tremendously exciting things to do, I think, on the design front in interfacing with the human being.
I think I'd have to add one more thing. I think it's going to come from all those new graduates that you're going to have tomorrow, because I really believe it is what you're teaching, John, what you're doing in your classroom, not just the book smart, but the hands-on, the creativeness, and it's going to take that convergence of the technical world with the automotive space to include that into the design, to really think out of the box and to really take us to that next step. So I think that's how the technology gets there. It's from us that have grown up in the automotive to let those others in and really use that to as the thought starters for the next generation.
Great. We've got a couple of microphones out here. I can hand you a mic. I can get this aired. All right, John.
I don't want to go too far from the design too soon, but one question that I have had, and especially with Dr. Pratt here, you put up your slide, and the first priority is the approximately 30,000 deaths. We got a lot of noise in that number. People who are drunk who fall in front of a bus. Take all that stuff out, whatever. A third of them are still drunk people killing themselves or killing someone else in a car accident. The stuff that we worry about when our kids go out, we worry they're going to get killed by a drunk driver. The stuff that I saw today blew me away. The technology we have is insane. $100 little cars that can do all that stuff, $100. How come we don't have a sensor in a car that stops the car when the person at the wheel is breathing out the vapor that any police officer can smell from 10 feet away? And is it just political, or is there really a technical challenge there?
So I guess since you asked me, I'll try to address it, but I don't think I'm the expert on this thing. I don't know very much about the technology, actually, that is there for that. But my guess is that it is, I don't know that political is the right word, but there are deep questions about what people feel, not about the autonomy in the car, but about their own autonomy. Okay, and I'll switch it for a minute. So I agree with you completely about the tragedy of drunk driving and how awful it is. Whether there's a sensor or not to do it right now, I know that if we're successful with the guardian angel type of things, that will also prevent those sorts of accidents, okay? But I'll give you another case. Should a car let you speed? Okay, totally separate from the drunk driving issue. Pretty soon, the maps in the GPS system, in the nav system on your car, even now some of them know how fast you're allowed to go on the road. Do we have the car not allow you to speed? This question has been there for a long time. Should there be a governor in the drive system of the car that's watching the speed? Why are we allowed to go faster than the maximum speed limit that might be there? This isn't a new question, ancient question, right? As a society, as a government, somehow we wrestle with this thing. And I'm not an expert on why it is but I know that it has some kind of trade-off between personal autonomy and societal good. And somehow we discuss that and we figure out what the answer is there. Presently, the answer is the car doesn't have a speed limit on it. I don't know how that's going to change in the future, but it's an excellent thing to think about. And I'm sorry I don't have a better answer to you, but it's hard.
And I might just add something briefly. And again, it's an area where I'm not an expert, but I think we might want to. You can imagine rethinking insurance, where and a person's notion of risk, versus something that's sort of quantifiable by data. You can imagine, sort of data-driven insurance, where when people make risky decisions, behave in a risky way, that somehow that impacts them economically. So there's a sort of feedback loop to change behavior.
When you get to my age, you feel, well, I'm sliding towards senile dementia, and I can't do things quite as fast as I used to be able to. So there are times that I have no trouble in believing when the car is smarter than I am. And so can you rise to the challenge of figuring out, okay, I should now go to the side of the road and call 911 and ignore the idiot who's trying to wreck me.
Right.
Careful.
Yay. I'll add just a little bit to that. One of the things that's unlikely to change is the maximum speed of cars, because there's a great energetic penalty to going too fast, right? We use up a lot with the wind resistance. And so it's likely the commuting times will not get much better than they are now. And so that means that, assuming that we still go to work the way that we do each day, and the traffic perhaps gets more efficient, but there's more cars, so it stays about the same, we're still going to be spending perhaps hours each day sitting in a car. And I don't know about any of you, but I don't particularly like that. I love to drive, but sitting in traffic is not any fun. What use could we put that time to? And one of the uses is for the car to monitor your health. And everything that we do in reaction to the things that we see and we drive might be a way for the car to understand a little bit about us. And as you say, if suddenly you're not doing so well, maybe it pulls off to the side of the road and calls 911. I think that's a very neat idea that might happen someday in the future.
So I've lived in Cambridge for 30 years, and for the first 10 of those years, I used to bicycle a lot. So, and then I had a life-changing moment in terms of my mind, and that mediated by a Cambridge bus driver. And so I don't want to be political about this, but you're factoring of this very complex problem into parts that we can do, parts that we can delegate. I'm wondering, and then some other interactive, collaborative themes. Is anybody looking at collaboration with bicycles specifically? Because it's in an urban area like Cambridge where it's very hard to change the wideness of streets, and it's a real interesting urban challenge. There might be transponders on bikes. It might be a two-way thing, and it might be something that by identifying it specifically, we could really change the flow of traffic in a city like ours.
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, I don't know that we've gone as far as putting sensors on bicycles, but I will tell you that's where the vehicle to pedestrian comes in. And in fact, one of the things we were demonstrating, you're a pedestrian, you're ready to cross the street, and you're around a blind corner. And the vehicle is coming around, and it's sensing for any pedestrians that may be near the sidewalk, and it sends a signal then to your cell phone to say, no, don't cross, I'm coming around the corner, it's not safe yet. And then as the vehicles are out of the space. So at least in the vehicle to pedestrian, yes, we've looked at that. But to your point, there's no reason why you can't take it to the next step and actually put those same active safety suite of sensors with Fusion on a bicycle, and then again have them communicating with the vehicles. I do think that's the next step. Absolutely.
My question speaks to the design issues. When the Toyota Prius was first introduced here in America, anyway, the design was resisted by a lot of people who thought it was maybe too futuristic looking, and now it's just like so accepted into the culture as just being a natural form. Is there a natural tendency from the design point of view to go for the quirky, I'll say, when you start looking at vehicles that have more futuristic components in them? Or is there something dragging it back to the standard designs, ultimately because the public wants that?
I still think that, it's funny because, the Prius has almost become iconic, right? It has in a very short time. And in any deviation, like the newest one, again, I'm a little puzzled, but that's okay. You'll do well and you'll sell a lot of them. I guess there's always this sense of the beauty and the sculpture, and if there's an appreciation of the proportions and the forms, and I guess that's the concern that I always have, even going forward. It's like those paradigms that you have, and you're perhaps you're so constrained with them that you can't accept that the quirkiness initially of a new form, and I think that's the piece that's the risk, right? It's billions of dollars to make a car, and if you mess it up, right, it's kind of a quick, it's another 500 million to get to redo it again, right? It's a big risk. So that's one where I just, it's so much, I think, in the brand's kind of DNA and the core of like what the brand stands for, what the company stands for then, and is how much do they want to push and risk, right? So I'm not answering that question that well, but I think it's all a matter of risk and how you want to manage it. So.
Hi. I was wondering, I guess there's a point at which technological illiteracy kind of makes new technologies unsafer, at least until the public perception catches up. I'm thinking, like, you always hear about people following their GPSs straight into the lake. And that's, I don't blame the GPS, but I guess I'm wondering if driver retraining is realistic. I know I don't particularly like the suggestion that I would have to go back to driver's ed just to like learn about a new braking system, or I'm not sure what the industry thinking is on that. Oh, thank you.
So I guess I'll start, since we make a lot of these solutions for the OEMs and certainly are on the leading edge. I think it's not so much retraining as it is education. You remember I mentioned the automotive grade, and these guys will shake their head yes, that what we try to do is we try to be out in front of that. We try to make sure that as we integrate these, that they are a little foolproof, right? In that even if you may not understand it, it still has enough user interface to explain what it's doing to not make the vehicle impossible to use, and so I think that's there. But I do think maybe the education of the value of it, because I think there's always some ability to disable it or not use it to its fullest extent, and so I do think that there needs to be education, particularly in this guardian angel or suite of active safety or whatever you want to call it, so that there is this acceptance and the knowledge of how to use it to the best of the ability. And John, maybe you've got some thoughts there.
Well, I would just say there's a danger of overtrust. So, for example, when Google did a trial of its chauffeur system a few years ago on the highway with 140 employees over a few months, they had employees that initially they said, oh my God, the car is driving itself, and they paid very close attention, but the car did a great job. And after lots of time, people overtrust and say, oh, the car works nearly perfectly, but then they're not necessarily ready to jump in. And so if you're an engineer that works on this and knows all the things that can go wrong, you might be hyper vigilant. But even I think myself, when we were doing the Urban Challenge, it doesn't take long, so you're just sitting in the back of the car with a safety driver, of course, at the wheel, and you're just typing away on your laptop doing emails, and the car's driving around, and you forget you're in an autonomous car. And so how do we make people have enough understanding of the context to know when to trust the system and when not to overtrust it?
I'm going to mention that John and Gil are going to be in this room actually for questions afterwards, and I think everybody will be around for questions. I want to save 10 minutes just so that we can present a little bit of data that actually is directly related to that question. So I want to thank our panelists. I really appreciate you coming and staying for the Q&A session and staying a little bit after for additional questions as well. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, John. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to invite Brian Reamer to come up and talk to us for a few minutes about a survey that we did in conjunction with MIT of consumers about autonomous vehicles and how they trust them and how they want to learn more about how this technology works.
Thanks, Craig. Many of you in here I've met in the past, and my time really spends looking at how we as humans behave with all the technologies that are being built around us. And I'd like to take a step back up, and there's going to be an enormous amount of disruptive change in the automotive industry over the next X years, and it's really hard to define what X is. There's obviously a lot of technology being poured into this, but there are a lot of political motivating factors that have to be dealt with, and there is us as the human in the loop that has a wet computer between the ears, taking from Jim Foley's best words, that may not keep speed educationally with what we're building around. So a couple weeks ago, a month ago, Craig comes to me and says, hey, Brian, what about a survey of how people believe, trust, all these driving alternatives and automated safety systems? And I say, Craig, most of my time is spent looking at how people behave with these technologies. And we do a lot of lab work and a lot of field driving work. And say, okay, fine. We'll come up with a survey. And so most importantly, we've got to thank Craig and Lisa who helped frame some of this, and Hillary Abraham, my team, who really drove a lot of the hard work of creating a survey, putting it into Qualtrics, looking at results, cleaning all that fun stuff up, and then building slides. And if we begin to think about automated vehicle technologies, and I really hate to use the word autonomous vehicles because if you're using the SLA definition of a level 5 or NHTSA of level 4, yeah, they're going to be in places, but they're out there. We see a lot of higher levels of automation in today's vehicle, as Gil talked about from the Guardian Angel concept, or as you talk about from some of the design concepts. This is rapidly, especially with the NHTSA cooperative agreement with IHS and the auto manufacturers, going to become prevalent everywhere, ubiquitously. However, if we want to look at how we connect drivers to those systems, to the availability of alternatives from ride sharing, to Uber, to bikes, to the bus, and we want to enhance mobility, especially for this older cohort that is rapidly aging into the period of time where driving cessation and difficulties making some of the driving decisions we need to do is increasing, we've got to look at seamless connectivity. So we said, okay, let's frame some research questions. Are consumers satisfied with the technology that's already in their vehicle? And again, I'm a questioner on surveys. I like to see what people are actually using. But are they reporting to be satisfied? How are consumers learning about in-vehicle technologies? How would they prefer learning about them? Are consumers willing to use various alternatives to driving? There's lots of them in the news these days, from Uber yesterday and Toyota to Lyft and GM every other day, it seems like. Are consumers willing to use automated vehicles? Are older adults in particular willing to use these technologies or willing to look at the alternatives that really are existing today? So, few less than 3,000 respondents in about a month of survey work, 59% male, 40% female, 1% chose not to identify. Most of the respondents own a car that is newer than 2010, so we're not talking about antiques here, we're talking about something that represents a little newer than average. And 52% are over 55. Well, this is a Boston-based organization here. I do work at MIT. Not surprisingly, it is a Boston-heavy sample. But as you can see, we got respondents from throughout the U.S., and I'm sure a few that represent beyond the U.S. borders. So take the question, how satisfied are consumers with the technology already in their vehicle? And again, we have to remember when we ask a question like this, the framing of that question and what people view as technologies in a car is quite fascinating to think through. So I sat in focus groups about 5 years ago, 7 years ago, where the focus group was stuck on technology as fuel economy. We don't think about that. So, but you have a really hard time razor cutting in a consumer panel or a consumer survey, what is that technology they're benchmarking on? We can get some general understanding. So about 28% of the people are very happy, 42% like it most, but there's about 15% of them out there that just don't like it. Now, what's the benchmark to what do they like, don't like? We don't gain that from this type of data, but we begin to correlate that back with whether that's age driving it, gender, and all the other factors. What I find the most interesting is right around the question you turned earlier. How did you learn to use the technology in the car, and how would you prefer to learn to use the technology in the car? So how are most people learning to use the technology? The manual or trial and error? Older adults, mostly the manual. Younger adults, mostly trial and error. However, as John Hansen knows, we've spent a lot of time looking at voice systems in the last couple of years, and a study we did about 3 years ago left the manual sitting there next to the driver's seat. And anybody want to take the fundamental guess of how many out of about 60 people picked up the manual to figure out how to use the voice system when it was given as an option? 1? 2? 0. Absolutely 0. So what I find intriguing in this is the myth about automation. All we're talking about, from design to active safety to guardian angel to highly automation, is acts of automation increasing the vehicle. The myth about automation is the more you automate, the less expertise you need in the human. It's a myth. We need to find new educational structures to perhaps softly nudge the consumer over towards the designer's mental model, and at the same time understand the consumer, what they want, and maybe move the designer a little further to the consumer. I'd like to say they're going to meet at some point, but reality may be otherwise. So if we think about how people want to learn, dealer delivery is important. Websites, online video, family and friends, other manufacturer material, car teaches me. We all learn differently. There is no one-size-fits-all solution here, but if we are going to connect the human to this technological ecosystem, we better start looking here. So one last point here beyond this work, we've been doing a lot of work in the dealer delivery side here. Hillary and Hal and my team went out to a whole bunch of manufacturers lately, did a little work on how are they training people in technologies in the car. How's our dealer delivery system doing at that? Not that bad. Anybody better? How about close to 0? Because there actually are some real good stars in there. But if we want to move and democratize safety, message from Delphi, we cannot do it from technology, we cannot do it from policy, we have to do it with a touch on the human. So if you, as an educated individual, walk into a dealer and look for help, you're going to most likely, on average, walk out more confused than you walk in. Go in trying to buy ACC to a Ford GM dealer, and you're most likely, on average, to walk out with them trying to sell you a car that's sitting on the lot. Highlight point, though, Genius Bar, BMW dealers, new discovery. GM actually has some phenomenal training if you get yourself there. So there are some highlights in there. Gets more interesting as well. Mobility options, we talked about that earlier. Well, again, we talked about Boston-based sample, lots of people using the bus. The red represents what have you used in the last year. The pink per se represents the percentage what would you consider using. Lots of people use a bus. We talk about car sharing, not many people are using that. A lot of people see potential there. Electronic bikes, mobility, again, Boston, heavy sample. They like that idea. Manual bike riding, yeah, I agree with you. I'm a big cyclist. I used to ride a couple thousand miles a year. I don't ride as much, don't have time. But man, the roads are not safe enough in even the suburbs at this point. It's scary. This is the one I find most interesting. Again, I'm going to use someone from Toyota who's retired, a good old friend, Jim Foley. Uber perhaps is the ultimate older driver's car today. Not necessarily tomorrow, but today. It's that mobility on demand that exists that has a lot of potential. But I don't think the market quite understands that yet, as much as it needs to. So when we begin to think about consumers' willingness to use automated vehicles, we find a very important factor. There's a generational gap here. Younger adults, they like the full autonomy side, not surprisingly. But look at the cut point somewhere in the mid-40s. And older adults, yeah, they want systems that help me. Very much so. Don't have the trust in nation that technology is going to solve this quickly. No. Again, consumer doesn't have a great benchmark, but it gives us a little flavor. There's a generational divide here, which means that as we develop these systems and as we move to the disruptions that are going to occur in the auto industry / auto ecosystem, because I don't really think about the traditional auto industry in the same way anymore. I really think it's a big ecosystem. It connects the technology players in the West Coast, Silicon Valley, all the way to the East Coast. We need to be thinking about what we're marketing and perhaps personalizing the marketing of that to the demographic group we're trying to target. Because yes, the automation, it may not provide this instantly. Maybe more here. We need to make sure the consumer understands what they're getting. The news media doesn't necessarily do a good job of that. So, okay, which technologies are you willing to use? Features that reduce the potential of severity of collision, features that help with speed control, features that help with steering control, and kind of that L3, L2 question, depending on how you want to define it, features that periodically take control from the driver and take things over. These guys are really not too happy with losing control. Not surprisingly. Younger adults, on the other hand, happy to give it up. Look how high the numbers are in features that reduce the potential severity of collisions. Huge. That's something everyone wants. The hard part I have is that as we develop these technologies and try to protect these consumers with these technologies and remove of operational responsibility, we are also removing the situations we learn from. We as humans are experiential learners. That means if we don't get hit by the airbag, which hurts, which may be the legal form of modern shock therapy, hate to put it that way, will we behave the same way next time? So we talked about speed limiters before. Maybe I'll just drive a little faster. It won't hurt. So that's some of the stuff we're going to have to think about long term. So when we look at correlations, and this goes more into the academic side of this work, we can begin to understand that, look, younger adults are willing to pay more for self-driving cars. They're more comfortable with higher levels of automation. They have higher trust in automation. Most likely, if we take this one step beyond this data, they were the ones who are going to develop over-trust even faster in the automation. Higher satisfaction with technology in the car correlates with higher trust in self-driving features, which means that as a technological innovation in auto, first impressions with active safety automation are going to matter a lot. If we mess up in our initial introduction of automation, who's going to want to pay for that next week? Nobody. First impressions matter. If you like it, you'll stick with it. If you don't like it, you may be a little more hesitant. And these are technologies that are going to significantly enhance safety over time. So here's the good news for the business folks in the room. Higher trust in automation correlates with willingness to pay more for self-driving car. People will pay for it if they begin to trust it, is the theory. Again, a lot of this survey data, let's prove it out with theoretical data with people in behavior in cars over time. So in summary, while consumers are satisfied with technologies in their current vehicles, overall interest in an autonomous vehicle is still relatively low for the older adult market. What do they want? They want technologies that support them. Again, they don't necessarily understand all the intricacies of the design details and the engineering details in the middle, but we'll get there. Current training in vehicle technologies does not match with consumer learning preferences. If I look at the entire auto ecosystem right now and I pick one point where innovation is needed more than any technological piece at all, it's in the delivery of what we have today to the consumer so that they understand how to leverage the electronic systems in their car. That means when we put AEB in there and the system takes over, we don't end up with the system that we had with ABS, with people getting scared from the system. Means that we need to be thinking about these educational models today. Most individuals, especially older adults, consider alternates to driving, but don't actually use them as much as they consider them. How do we change that in this mobility framework moving forward? So Gil put up a very nice slide earlier on of the aging trends in the US. How do we get the shift from I've always driven to exploring those mobility options that exist to me? So the older adults who can benefit the most from these solutions that exist We're humans by nature. We don't change instantly. We many times need a push, a shove, a pull, a kick to get us there. How do we move people to making more strategic, better decisions over life, but not over-trusting the alternatives? So I'm going to thank Craig a lot, because Craig really is the one who said, why don't we look at this? And the reality is I spend so little time looking at perception data that it's kind of fun to step back for a moment and look at that. And now as I sit back, I begin to look at this in relation to some of the experimental data, and it begins to frame a whole new set of fun hypotheses. So thank you, Craig, and thank you, Hillary, who pulled most of this together.
Thanks, Brian and Hillary. The presentation that you just saw is on the thumb drive that's out in the hallway there, so you will see that. We will be issuing a white paper and a press release on Monday with this data in it. So keep an eye out for that, but in the meantime, you can kind of review all of these slides there. Cocktails outside the room here, which I'm sure you're all ready for. I know I am ready for a cocktail, so enjoy. Thanks.